Tonight on Real News from the Blaze, our Attorney General Eric Holder met with African-American pastors today about the 2012 election. SC, what do we know?
That's right. Holder and the IRS was also there, advised black pastors on voting rights in the upcoming election. If you think that's odd, you are not the only one. We will dissect that later tonight.
All right, all that and much more on Real News from the Blaze coming up in just 60 minutes.
This is not going to be about politics. This is about principles. We're going to take it upon ourselves to be part of the solution.
We are going to restore history, restore our honor, restore his idea that character is what matters.
Let us not lose this battle because we sat down.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Welcome to GBTV. I'm Eric Stacklebeck in for Glenn tonight. You know, ever since the so-called Arab Spring began, we've pointed out here at GBTV that socialists are some of the loudest cheerleaders for the Muslim Brotherhood and its rise to power in Egypt and beyond. Well, a lot of folks, even some establishment conservatives, scoff at that notion. No, they say. The followers of Marx and the sons of Sharia could never, ever work together. This is fear-mongering of the highest order, they say. Well, I can give you many examples about how radical Islamists and the radical left can and are working together diligently. It's all well documented. And if you watch this show every night, you already know what I'm talking about. Here's the deal. Although socialists and Islamists do disagree on many things, the enemy of my enemy is my friend in their view. And their shared enemies are, number one, Bible-believing Christians. Number two, Israel. Number three, capitalism. And number four, that pesky U.S. Constitution. Basically, they are working together, despite their differences, to turn Judeo-Christian Western civilization on its head. And the number one reason that I know this, beyond a shadow of a doubt, because earlier this month they joined forces to come after me in a very personal way. On May 14th, I gave a speech at Portland State University. Now, the PSU chapter of Christians United for Israel, also known as CUFI, good friends of GBTV, graciously invited me to give a presentation on the latest developments in the Middle East. CUFI students put up posters around campus to promote the event, which was open to the public. Now, the posters featured the American and Israeli flags, plus my picture and bio. And as you can see, anti-Semitic vandals defaced the posters. They drew swastikas over the Star of David and scrawled pro-Palestinian slogans. Other posters around campus were simply torn down. Higher learning and free speech. Where to begin? First off, imagine the anger, shock, and revulsion that the Jewish students must have felt to see the symbol of Nazi Germany, perpetrators of the Holocaust, covering the Star of David. What did every Jewish student on the Portland State campus feel when they were greeted by that image? They have clearly been marked for harassment and intimidation, if not worse. It also sends a message to Christian supporters of Israel, including myself, to watch their backs. Zionists, beware. But that's not all. In a mass email that was sent out by a pro-Palestinian student group made up of leftists and Islamists, I was branded, quote, a racist, hateful, intolerant, Islamophobic, fundamentalist, right-wing pundit who was not welcome in Portland. They said nothing, however, about the swastikas that were drawn over the event posters. But they did announce that they were organizing a protest against me. Now, between the swastikas and being called a racist, I gotta admit, I was feeling some righteous anger. But the night before I traveled to Portland, I cracked open my Bible. I know, very dangerous, a radical Christianist, and I opened it right to this verse from the book of Isaiah, staring me right in the face. It reads, "No weapon that is formed against you will prosper, and every tongue that accuses you in judgment you will condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their vindication is from me, declares the Lord." Now, I don't know about you, but I don't believe in coincidences. I read that verse several times, and then I went to bed with an overwhelming sense of peace. Then when I woke up the next morning and checked my email, the very first message I read, sent by a good friend, started like this. We'll be praying for you in Portland, Eric. Remember, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Now, where I'm from, that's called confirmation. I was ready for Portland State. And sure enough, when I arrived for my speech, I was greeted by about 40 protesters. You had the usual mix of Islamo-leftist zombies working together arm in arm. Muslims in hijabs and skullcaps, aging hippies, Occupy Portland stragglers, student socialists, maybe a few professors. They were all there, and they were clearly working together. But they didn't succeed. The event was a big success, and their protest was a bust. And by the way, their tactic was to tape their mouths shut. They called it a silent protest against my racism. I guess that spared me what Israeli Ambassador Michael Urin went through at the University of California, Irvine, when he was violently shouted down, or what conservative commentator David Horowitz experienced at UC San Diego. Watch this.
I'm a Jew. The head of Hezbollah has said that he hopes that we will gather in Israel so he doesn't have to hunt us down globally. For it or against it?
For it.
For it. How nice. Well, I'd imagine some of our friends at Portland State were also for it. So I challenged them directly to take the tape off and debate me, to prove me wrong, shoot holes in my facts. Let's have an open and honest debate. You call me a racist? Prove it. As you might have guessed, I'm still waiting. But here's the key. I addressed them directly. Right from the start, I challenged them. Honestly, I think they were kind of stunned. After all, I was supposed to be rattled by their fearsome presence. These intellectual giants are used to shutting people up and shutting down conversation through intimidation and accusations. At Portland State, it didn't work. Ladies and gentlemen, take a lesson from that. This is a time for boldness in the face of evil. We can't be wallflowers here. There's too much at stake. Their ideas are bankrupt, and yes, they are evil. They cannot stand up to the truth. And in the end, the truth is going to win out. It won't be easy getting there. Believe me, it's going to be tough, but it's going to win out, and it'll set you free. So, these intellectual giants at Portland State stayed for about 25 minutes of my speech, and instead of debating me, they got up in unison and they left. Now, they waved some signs with anti-Israel slogans. A few shouted some insults, and then they were gone. Just like that. Brainwashed, misled, and really just sad. You know, I actually feel bad for them in a way. I do. Because they've been lied to and they are lost. The Bible says, and there's that Bible again, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So let's be educators. You know, I was told after my speech that a few of the protesters actually took off their tape, stayed, and listened to my entire talk. Now, some men you just can't reach. I know that all too well. Because at the end of the day, this is a spiritual struggle at its core. If you're watching this show on a regular basis, you already know that. You know the signs and the times. You have discernment, clearly. And you have an idea of what is going on, what is coming, and what it all means. You know, the book of Chronicles talks about the sons of Issachar, an elite group of 200 men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do. They advised King David. So I challenge everyone watching tonight to be sons and daughters of Issachar. You have all this knowledge. You understand the times. So what are you going to do with it? Time is short and getting shorter. Don't kid yourself. Look, the truth is going to win in the end. Absolutely. The Bible says, if God is for us, who can stand against us? Well, he's for this cause. Of that, I'm certain. And remember, the reason that socialists, Islamists, black radicals like Farrakhan, the reason they hate America and Israel is because most of our people, are still fiercely democratic, fiercely sovereign, and still believe in the truth of the Ten Commandments. And that means America and Israel are standing in the way. For the Islamists, they're standing in the way of the caliphate. For the socialists, they're standing in the way of a Marxist utopia. But we are standing in the way. Make no mistake. We are the restrainers. God is the ultimate restrainer. But here on earth, America and Israel's refusal to budge to the world's demands puts us in the crosshairs. Don't kid yourself. Together. Now, President Obama doesn't like that closeness. And as he told the Russian President Medvedev recently, the only thing restraining him from giving away the farm right now is that he wants to get reelected. And if that happens, Israel will truly be all alone. But something tells me they're going to be just fine because they have friends in high places. As for me, I think it's probably a wise decision to stand with a land and a people that God calls the apple of his eye. So, joining me now to talk a bit more about this unholy alliance of radical Islamists, radical leftists, are my good friends Jamie Glazov, author of United in Hate, and the executive director of Christians United for Israel, CUFI, David Bragg. Gentlemen, welcome.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Honor to have you guys. You guys are both doing cutting-edge work on this subject matter.
Appreciate it. And let me just add, by the way, at that protest, as the protesters were leaving and walking out on you, I was so impressed with what you did. As they left, you said to them, God bless you, repeatedly, God bless you. And I thought that underscored beautifully the difference between our Judeo-Christian heritage and the Islamist worldview they embrace.
Sure.
And that is crucial to bring up at every point.
There is.
Love, love, love.
Yeah, and you know, unfortunately, the other side all too often is bereft of that. And Jamie, you wrote about this eloquently in your book, United in Hate. I mean, this is, you see Castro and Ahmadinejad on the cover, and you know you got something juicy here. They're on the cover together. So, subtitle, The Left's Romance with Tyranny and Terror. In my monologue, I ran down a few reasons why I think the Islamist and the leftist work together. What's your take on this unholy alliance?
Eric, let me crystallize this perhaps starting with a religious theme, because there's some religious themes here. Hebrews 13:3, remember those in prison as though you are in prison with them, and suffering as though they were suffering. That's what a lot of the premise of my life is based on. My parents were Russian dissidents in the Soviet Union. We suffered tremendous persecution there. Millions of my people butchered. And the left here in this society tried to push them into invisibility and made excuses for that totalitarian regime. Let me say this very quickly in the terror war today. Fakhar Yunus. Why is that name not known? Trayvon Martin's name is known. Fakhar Yunus, a Pakistani woman, just jumped off a balcony in Rome in March. Her face disfigured by acid. She lived like that for 10 years. Her Pakistani husband poured acid on her face in Pakistan because she wouldn't suffer his physical abuse anymore. The underpinnings of Islamic misogyny, of Islamic gender apartheid caused that to happen, forced his hand. Where are the women's studies departments? Where's the Western left standing up for Fakhar Yunus? Why is her name not known? David Horowitz, what a hero. He's standing up for Muslim women, Arab women being persecuted and killed and mutilated. Why isn't he considered a hero? Why is he being slandered? Why is he being slandered by the left instead of being praised? And there should be a standing ovation for David among the Western leftists and among the academic left.
So why isn't he getting it?
So let me say this, that if the left was going to admit the victims, if they were going to admit the name of Fakhar Yunus, they would be admitting that there's an evil adversary, that there's an adversary culture. If they admitted that, they would have to admit and concede that our society is superior, that Western civilization is superior. In order to do that, they would have to admit that our society is worth defending and protecting. They can't do it because their aim is to destroy this society. So therefore, they're in league with those who want to destroy us as well.
And moral relativism till the bitter end.
Absolutely. So they must push the victims of totalitarianism into invisibility. And I take that very personally because they did it to my family and to millions of my people in the former Soviet Union.
That's right. And David, I mean, at CUFI events, and this was a CUFI event that I spoke at, how often do you see the most radical leftists and kind of radical Islamist types together? Is this kind of a frequent occurrence, protesting Kufi events? Or?
Unfortunately, it is a frequent occurrence. I've been protested, and I'm a heck of a lot of a nicer guy than you are. and it's common, and I think Jamie touched on it, which is for their worldview to be maintained, the victims of totalitarianism have to be pushed to the sidelines, and the victims of Islamic terror have to be pushed to the sidelines. And therefore, the cause of Israel is right in the crosshairs. If Israel's cause is just, their worldview is challenged. Let me add this. I think the tip of the spear is this unholy alliance of the radical left and Islamists. But I think they're a minority today on our college campuses. I think they're a minority in the country. Why are we losing the argument? Why is Israel losing the argument? Why is America losing the argument? I think the problem is because there is an audience receptive to this message. They're receptive because they have a primarily liberal worldview. And this gets to the core distinction between liberals and conservatives. Their worldview says there is no such thing as evil. If there's no such thing as evil, and people are really mad at Israel and really mad at America, it must be Israel's fault somehow, somewhere. It must be America's fault. And any time you stand up for the justice of Israel's cause, for the justice of our cause, you challenge that fundamental worldview.
Now, I have to mention you address these themes too in your book, In Defense of Faith, which is a great read.
Yeah, I get into it very clearly because I'm afraid a generation has lost track of the source of their own goodness. If you value human life, if you feel sympathy for someone far away, the way Jamie was talking about a Pakistani woman, it's only because you're familiar with a book called the Bible, or you live in a civilization that has taught you the values of that Bible. Generations have forgotten where these values come from in the first place.
That's right, Jamie.
Here's what I want to say, and what I'm getting really sick and tired of, and what I'm very passionate about, is the names that you're called, the names that I'm called, the names that heroes like David Horowitz and Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer. Here's what I want to say. Am I an Islamophobe? Do I hate Muslims? I'm on the side of Muslims being persecuted. David Horowitz right now organizing panels on Islamic gender apartheid, trying to focus on the victims. We care about Islamic women. I care about Aqsa Parvez, a 16-year-old girl that was suffocated by her father because she wouldn't wear a veil. I've had sleepless nights over this for years, trying to save the victims of female genital mutilation and forced marriage and honor killings. We're on the side of Muslim women. We're on the side of Arab women, and yet they call us racists. But what are they doing on behalf of those women? How can they call us racist when we're the ones that care about Muslims and about Arab women and about all persecuted people under that ideology? So this is really twisted, that they're just turning the whole world on its head and calling the heroes these terrible names when in fact they're the heartless ones.
What do you make of the way they group America and Israel together, Jamie? You know, in my monologue I said America and Israel stand for some similar principles. David, you touched on it, the Ten Commandments, the Bible. What do you think of the left and Islamist kind of grouping America and Israel together?
Well, absolutely. They hate freedom. They hate the concept of the individual. They hate liberty, and they hate virtue. And overall, they hate the beauty of life. And in my opinion, after everything that I've studied, that beauty is represented by female beauty, by women's beauty, and that's why Islamic gender apartheid wants to cover women's faces and mutilates them and pours acid on their faces, because women's beauty is the incarnation of God's beauty on this earth.
And the feminists are silent about this,
and they're silent. And this is the thing, and I will say that I'm also very passionate about this because I came here as a little boy from the Soviet Union, and I love this country. And I will kiss the ground here today if you would ask me to, because I love the United States of America, and I resent those that want to transform the most beautiful country in the world and slander it. And of course, the same goes for Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East. And you would think that those supporting gay rights, women's rights, all minority rights would be on the side of Israel.
Yeah, David, we have about 20 seconds.
Well, I just want to echo what Jamie said. You know, while Jamie's family was suffering in the Soviet Union, I was growing up here in the freedom of America. And I was taught the Soviet Union was not an evil government, it was just a different government. It took a great leader like Reagan to say it was an evil government, and where did he say it? He said it in front of a meeting of the National Association of Evangelicals, because at the end of the day, people connected to the Bible through their Christian or Jewish faith are receptive to the idea that there is such a thing as evil. Without that, we can never prevail over our opponents.
Spoken beautifully. David Bragg, Executive Director of CUFI, author of In Defense of Faith. Jamie Glazov, author of United in Hate. Great to have you guys. We'll do it again. Coming up, we're about 3 months away from the Republican National Convention, and the GOP isn't the only group ramping up its planning for the big event. We'll tell you about that next.
I think it went well, though, right?
Great.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Joe Gray with the Gojo Hands-Free, the only device on Earth that's truly hands-free. These things are not hands-free. You stick them in your ears, gross, but you still have to hold your phone. And these are not legal for hands-free driving. The Gojo goes on in 1 second. Hello? 1 Mississippi. Hey, Mom, I can't talk right now. And it works with all phones. Flip phones, cordless phones, even landlines. And pop it off. Any phone, big or small, even the most radical moves won't knock it off. The Gojo goes on with 1 hand, so you can keep your eyes on the road. I love it.
It's true hands-free.
Call now and I'll send you 2 Gojos for just $10. And I'll throw in my Super Grip mat absolutely free. It grips and holds your phone, music player, or anything else you can think of. Call now and I'll double the entire offer. Just pay processing and handling. That's 4 Gojos and 2 Super Grip mats for just $10.
To order for $10 plus processing and handling, call 1-800-493-0575 or order online at gojohandsfree.com.
When it's warm, you'd love to open every door and let fresh air into your home. The trouble is, you'd end up letting lots of bugs into your home as well. Now there's Magic Mesh, the new type of screen door that opens easily and then magically closes itself behind you. The secret isn't really magic, it's magnets, 18 magnets to be exact. When you separate them, they automatically snap back together. That makes it great for pets too, because instead of scratching and whining, they can come and go as they please. So let the fresh air in and keep those annoying bugs out with Magic Mesh, a $40 value, yours for just $19.95. But wait, call right now and we'll double the offer. Just pay separate processing and handling. You get 2 Magic Mesh curtains for just $19.95. Don't delay. Call and order yours today.
To order Magic Mesh for $19.95 plus processing and handling, call 1-800-572-9265 or log on to buymagicmesh.com.
Are you a homeowner 62 or older? Are you looking to access cash from your home or eliminate your monthly mortgage payment? How about both? Then call the number on your screen. With a reverse mortgage, there are no monthly mortgage payments. You will still own your home and you will have many options on how to receive your cash. Call now. It's time to get all the facts. And Reverse Mortgage Solutions is here to help.
Call 855-200-1039. That's 855-200-1039.
Coming up on Real News tonight, Tea Party favorite Ted Cruz forces a runoff in the GOP Senate primary in Texas. So, Buck, is this a shot across the bow for the establishment?
If Ted Cruz is able to win, it certainly will be. We're going to break down what's at stake in this race now and talk about the implications for the Tea Party nationally and what it means this coming fall.
All right, sounds good. That's up next on Real News from the Blaze at 6 o'clock.
And welcome back. Well, after Occupy Wall Street's mediocre May Day protest, many people are questioning if the movement is dwindling. But with summer approaching and elections in the near future, the OWS movement is reemerging in full force. With me now to discuss their strategy is the Blaze's very own Buck Sexton, author of Occupy American Spring. It's a must-read, and Buck, welcome. And you get inside this movement better than anyone. You've been on the ground, which is the key as a journalist. You actually get on the ground in the trenches. You have seen these people up close. You've been at OWS protests. Okay, so there was a lot of hype surrounding May Day. Kind of seemed like a bust in some respects. Tell me why that was, number one. And number two, what is the Occupy Wall Street strategy now?
Oh, Eric, great to be with you as always. What we've seen so far is attempts at a resurgence from Occupy Wall Street, but it hasn't yet caught fire. And I think what we saw on May Day showed an ability for the occupiers to organize, to get large numbers of people to come out in march in favor of all these left-wing causes. But there wasn't the chaos that they openly promised they had been planning to shut down bridges in the city of New York, sort of similar to what they did in the fall when there were 800 arrests on the Brooklyn Bridge. They said they were going to do that, which of course would have thrown the city into a state of panic. People wouldn't have been able to get around. They backed down from that. I will say that we did see in New York a pretty substantial Black Bloc Wildcat March. And that will come back because there's been a number of these sort of Black Bloc incidents that have been showing up now at different Occupy protests across the country, more so than we saw in the fall.
So they're getting violent.
Well, Eric, they're moving towards this tactic right now. They've decided that their message is not winning over the American people, so they're kicking in windows, they're throwing trash cans, they are actively forcing confrontations, violent confrontations, running through phalanxes of police, because they think that that is a way to sort of create this revolution narrative that they seek so strongly to force on the American people.
Buck, how about the NATO protests? Got pretty wild there too, as well.
Well, that's where the Black Bloc were the main players. I do have to say that there was also a few arrests in connection with what law enforcement says were alleged terrorist plots that had to do with individuals who were associated with some of these anarchist groups who tend to employ these Black Bloc tactics. And so we saw that. We saw possibly active plots to engage in terrorist action. And we also saw the Black Bloc running around, injuring police officers. A police officer was stabbed in the leg. And a lot of people in Chicago were frightened. But again, they weren't able to paralyze the city. Law enforcement there did its job, and things tended to peter out. So this is where we are right now. They're still waiting, I think, for their moment of resurgence. They're still waiting to have that day where all of a sudden Occupy seizes the national headlines. And they're planning, too. And we actually have a video, Eric, that shows you some of the things digitally they're trying to do online to get people to rally around the old Occupy ideas. We have the clip?
Thumbs down, eyes up. Summer disobedience school is in session. What are we going to do this summer, kids?
Shut down Wall Street.
We're shutting down Wall Street. And where is Wall Street?
Wall Street is everywhere!
Day one, Convergence Point, Bryant Park, 12 p.m. We're going to come down 5th Avenue as civilians. We're going to approach Bank of America. We're going to infiltrate Bank of America. What are we going to do once we're inside?
Mic check.
A massive mic check. And we've disrupted business. And what do we do once we've been kicked out?
Wall!
Make a wall. What does that look like? Right. This bank is shut down.
Now, Eric, I know it's a little silly, but here's the thing. Part of this, and this goes back to Saul Alinsky, the sort of tactics of the community organizers.
Absolutely.
They got to make this stuff appear fun.
Yes.
They want people to show up. They want people to think that taking part in this so-called revolutionary movement is going to be entertaining. So they're putting out these videos. That was taken off of OccupyTheory.org. That's what they believe.
They're hip. They're trendy.
Absolutely. But what we've also seen now, I think, and this is something that hasn't been as prominently covered in America, you see 30 days plus of massive protests, really more like riots, in Montreal. Occupy Wall Street has officially joined in, I should say Occupy Montreal, but the Occupy movement has officially joined this movement, Eric, in Montreal, which is about tuition hikes. But here's the thing. They are violating a recently passed emergency ordinance in the city of Montreal by gathering, and they've also been very violent and used Black Bloc tactics in many cases against the police there. And the government is now sitting at the negotiating table with them. So as we're talking about what's coming and what we should be thinking about, here we see, just to our north in Canada, a bunch of Occupy-affiliated groups getting together here and actually forcing a national government to sit down to have a dialogue with them about what they want. In this case, it's student tuitions. But, Eric, you can be sure that other Occupy movements in the U.S. and around the world are looking at this saying, aha, we can get them to do what we want.
Absolutely.
So that's another component of this.
That's the new model. And, Buck, real quick, you talked about Occupy trying to make a splash, gain relevance. How about the Democratic and Republican national conventions coming up? What's their plan then?
They're planning right now, Eric. We don't know exactly what's coming when it comes to the DNC and the RNC, but they've always been very clear that their goal is to recreate 1968, if they can. That was what they hoped to do in NATO. They weren't able to do so. I think that at least one of the conventions they're planning to really make a splash, if you will. You will certainly see a resurgence, or rather more of these black bloc tactics. You will see police officers probably injured and wounded in the course of dealing with these protests. And what they really seek to do here, Eric, is to force us to take their message, at least, if not seriously, to pay attention to it. They're shoving this down our throats. They want this sort of socialist utopia to be something that Americans have to always be talking about.
We got to wrap up there, Buck. Thanks again. Author of Occupy American Spring. You can watch Buck on Real News from the Blaze, weeknights at 7 o'clock Eastern, right after the show. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
When the government threatened their freedom, he was the last to believe in their cause.
You want me to make an army out of a group of peasants?
But became the first willing to die for it.
Today we're going to send a message. Freedom is our wives, our children, and we will defend it or die trying. Que viva Cristo Rey!
Andy Garcia, Eva Longoria. For Greater Glory, rated R, in theaters this Friday.
Have you considered silver as part of your portfolio strategy? Silver is the most affordable precious metal, and it has outperformed gold over the last 10 years. Maybe it's time you consider silver. Silver can help diversify and balance your portfolio with a tangible asset that can move independently from other financial assets. And silver enjoys the benefit of both investment and industrial demand. It's never too late to diversify your portfolio with precious metals. Let Goldline, a precious metals leader, help you get started. Call Goldline and get your free investor kit. Be sure to ask about our price guarantee program. Use your credit card for safety and convenience and enjoy free shipping. Call Goldline now and buy silver with confidence. Get started today with Goldline.
Preparation, focus, hard work. It's a personal commitment. It's what drives me. It gives me the confidence to look my opponent in the eye and say, game on. Preparing for life's future challenges is just as important. Food Insurance Emergency Food Supply gives me the same assurance that I'm ready for whatever comes my way. Preparation is everything. Order today at foodinsurance.com.
I live alone, so when I slipped and fell in the kitchen last month and couldn't get to a phone, that's when I knew I needed Life Alert. With just one press of this button, I'm connected to the Life Alert Center, where I can get the help I need, even when I cannot reach a phone. With Life Alert, I'm never alone.
Call 1-800-996-6392 for your free Life Alert brochure. That's 1-800-996-6392. Call today.
And welcome back. So Iran is pushing forward with its uranium enrichment work, surprise, surprise, a blatant act of defiance of the United Nations, which is calling on Iran to suspend any work on its nuclear weapons program. This is all in the latest report from the IAEA, the UN watchdog group. Meanwhile, a group of former Iranian diplomats are warning the West that it has a false sense of security, based on a recent fatwa from Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, who has said that a nuclear bomb is a sin in Islam. Something tells me he didn't mean it. Well, joining me now to discuss it are Reza Khalili, a former Iranian Revolutionary Guards member and the author of a must-read book, A Time to Betray. And Claire Lopez wears many hats. She's a senior fellow at both the Center for Security Policy and the Clarion Fund. She also sits on the board of directors for the U.S. Congressional Task Force for National and Homeland Security. Claire, Reza, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Great to see you guys again. And we've been in the trenches together for a number of years warning about this Iranian threat. And Claire, I want to start with you. You recently wrote a piece, because this hits close to home. A lot of people talk about Iran. They say, well, it's over there. It's in the Middle East. Why do we have to worry about it? Well, you recently wrote an eye-opening piece about Iran and Hezbollah's network in Latin America. At our doorstep, tell us what they're up to in our backyard?
Yes, well, you're exactly right, Eric. Iran has been expanding its presence in the Western Hemisphere for a number of years now. But in particular, it has been working with Hugo Chavez, the president of Venezuela. And there and elsewhere throughout Latin America, we see a much expanded presence of Iran in diplomatic facilities, but also commercial facilities and military facilities as well. And every place, it has to be understood that those military, commercial, diplomatic facilities exist. There are cover slots in those places for the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Quds Force, and the Intelligence Service of Iran, the MOIS,
and I guess
for liaison.
Where Iran goes, Hezbollah follows, right?
Exactly, and we know that Hezbollah has had a presence in Latin America for a long time. The tri-border area where Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil meet has been a locus of that presence for a long time. And Hezbollah, too, is expanding its presence, not just through South America, but on up through Mexico, the United States, and Canada as well.
So, Claire, million-dollar question. We're not the target, right? Supposedly, according to some analysts. It's only Israel's problem. So why is Iran doing this? Why are they establishing a network in our backyard?
Well, we very much are the target, as I know that you're well aware. The United States is called by Iran the Great Satan, the Shaitan Bazork. Israel is the little Satan, and they will strike against Israel and against Jews wherever they can. But the United States is the main target, and we have to understand that. Those Hezbollah cells have a presence in the United States as well, not just Latin America. We hear that they are linking up, for example, with the Mexican drug cartels. And on up into our country, too.
We're going to talk more about that, Claire. But Reza, you also recently wrote a very eye-opening piece. Now, I love this angle we're taking about Iran targeting America, Iran in the Western Hemisphere. People need to know this. Reza, you recently wrote a piece saying that the Iranian regime are using some American mosques as command centers. Tell us about that.
Well, they've been very active out of mosques for a long time. They've been running major operations from Asia, in Europe, and they have infiltrated America. And as I stated, mosques provide major operational centers for the Quds forces. From there they recruit, they collaborate with other Muslims of Sunnis and others even, Muslim Brotherhood, and absolutely, they've had a very close relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic student associations, Islamic centers. And what they do is that, one is that they do reconnaissance, where they do reconnaissance on sensitive sites within U.S., within specific cities, which would create havoc and chaos for the American people and also create fear. And the other would be operational teams, which then, once the order is received, they go into action with terrorist activities. And I passed some of this information to the FBI. They are in America, they are ready to attack, and it's unfortunate that we've allowed this to go on for so long, because all these years of negotiation and vacillation has provided them this opening to infiltrate our society and get ready to strike.
And Reza, if anyone knows what they're talking about when it comes to this Iranian issue, it's you. You are a former member of Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps, the vanguard of this regime. You worked inside this regime. You still have great sources on the ground in Iran. So tell us, how close are they right now to acquiring a nuclear weapon?
Well, I have to say, as I've indicated before, they already have nuclear bombs, which was purchased from the former Soviet republics. Many sources have confirmed that.
So you believe they have the bomb right now?
They do, but the thing is, as a source within the Guards Intelligence Unit told me recently, he could not attest to it to be a viable bomb, meaning that they have the code. He believed that they did not. But he also indicated that they have the neutron bombs. And we know North Korea has already this super EMP
That's right.
arm, which is a neutron bomb.
Which we've talked about on this show. Claire, Reza says they have the bomb. I guess the bottom line, when you have the bomb, Do they have the mechanism right now, the Iranians? And look, we know they're working on intercontinental ballistic missiles, which can reach the U.S., but do they have the mechanism right now, the delivery system, to deliver a bomb?
Well, I think what we've seen is that they certainly have had the time and the technological capability to create warheads. There's no question about that. They also have shown the ability to test missiles, the Shahab-3, the Sejil-2, and so forth. Now, when you think about those kinds of missiles being emplaced perhaps in Venezuela, within striking distance of the continental United States, or alternatively, yes, they could also shoot them off of the decks of, let's say, fishing trawlers, off of our coasts. And when Reza talks about an EMP, you're talking about the need for one single weapon, a nuclear weapon exploded in the atmosphere that can wipe out, fry all of our all of our electronics in the United States.
We'd be back in the Stone Age.
Shut us down.
We'd be in the Stone Age.
And they will not have any hesitation to do this. Right. We know that they've already struck the United States.
And that's a great segue, Claire, to what I was going to ask you. Iran and 9/11. Tell us about the connection.
Exactly. We hear some of our national security leadership talking about the potential as a hypothetical in the future that Iran might or could take the decision to strike the United States. Well, according to the Havlish case, a legal case decided in the Southern District of New York, the Federal District Court of New York, Judge George Daniels, last December 2011, issued a ruling in the Havlish case, for which I was an expert witness, that Iran shares responsibility together with al-Qaeda and with Hezbollah for the attacks of 9/11. Without Iranian assistance and support, material and direct support to al-Qaeda, those attacks could not have succeeded.
And this was a ruling in a New York federal court.
It was, and all of the documents for that case, the judge's ruling, his findings of fact and law, as well as a number of affidavits, are actually posted online. Right. www.iran911case.com.
And if you go through the 9/11 Commission report, which was released in 2004, it says, yes, some of the 9/11 hijackers passed through Iran. So no surprise here.
Absolutely.
But don't worry, Claire. We can negotiate with these guys. Don't worry, they're reasonable people. Diplomacy will work with the Iranians. Reza, I think not. And you know the ideology better than anyone. You worked inside this regime. Tell us the thinking inside this Iranian regime, and will they use the bomb if, God forbid, when they get it?
Well, I made several reports to the CIA on the ideology itself. And I'm still bewildered that U.S. leaders, our leaders here, still don't understand that it's not about the economy, it's about the ideology. And actually, as I just revealed recently, they have prepared their forces for war. They believe war must take place against Iran to trigger that end-time scenario that they expect. And they will attack Israel, they will attack targets within U.S. and U.S. military bases abroad, believing that such event will create the circumstances for the coming of the last Islamic Messiah, Imam Mahdi. And this is quite dangerous because right now, per the last IAEA report, they have over 6 tons of enriched uranium, good for 5 nuclear bombs. They have doubled their stock on the 20% enrichment uranium, and they're working out of secret sites, further enriching and working on weaponization of missiles. So we're going to find ourselves in a catastrophe type scenario because a single nuclear detonation in the Persian Gulf will shut down all exports out of that area and the global collapse of the economy.
Real quick, Reza and Claire, I want to ask you this real quick. We only have about a minute left. Unless we're going to have a catastrophe, unless, what can we do about this nuclear weapons program in Iran and about this regime?
Well, let me make very clear, any attack on the nuclear sites will not do. This regime already has the know-how, the technical, the ability, and the financials. We've got to go for regime change, and we've got to approach the Iranian people, unify them, and in a strategical strike on the Revolutionary Guard bases, create the atmosphere where the regime would fall. Otherwise, we are not going to achieve anything.
Claire, real quick.
I absolutely agree 100% with Reza. The only way to stop this regime in Iran from acquiring these most dangerous weapons is to change that regime. The Iranian people were on the streets by the millions 2 years ago. We did nothing to help them. We need to stand with the Iranian people in their quest for liberty. Help them to change their own regime.
Are you listening, Mr. President? I hope so. Well, Reza Khalili, Claire Lopez, thanks so much for joining us. And the book, once again, is called A Time to Betray. Well, the United States envoy to Israel has already guaranteed our country has plans in place to attack Iran if diplomacy and sanctions fail to persuade it from disbanding its nuclear weapons program. Now, if the U.S. military takes action, we'll see more sacrifices from our troops, men and women who are true patriots. Former U.S. Navy SEAL Marcus Luttrell is one of those people who has put his life on the line before for our country. He recently sat down with Glenn to talk about his new book, Service, which documents the stories of true American heroism. Check it out.
We were sitting at the table last night, and you said to Rafe he had a little sticker tattoo on. And you said, don't ever get a tattoo.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hard to have any credibility because you were wearing short sleeves. Roll your sleeves up. And that goes.
It's kind of hard to have some credibility with that, huh?
And it goes all the way on the back. You have half of an eagle.
I do.
Because
Seal Trident. I wear half of the Seal Trident, and my brother wears the other half. And when we stand together, it makes the mural. We decided to get that done. I was in my late 20s probably when we had a bunch of buddies die, and being in the SEAL teams was our life. And without him, I couldn't possibly think about living, and vice versa. And we gave everything to the team, so that was kind of our tribute to our fallen brothers. And then that was it. That was supposed to be the last one, and then catastrophe after catastrophe. Guys kept dying.
This and the other arm is the book in body art.
It is. Yeah, it's a tribute to, like I said, my fallen brothers. Covers a lot of scars, and it's a constant reminder of what we've lost. Not that I need that, but it's just my kind of way of celebrating their life and their death. This is the red horse of the apocalypse, and then the pale, the gray-green horse. So death and or war and death, and then the American flag. It's all tattered and ripped up,
which is on the cover. It's all ripped up. Why?
Just represents war and commitment and death and tears. Just like the red and white stripes. The red stripes are the blood that's shed, and the white are the tears.
You've changed a lot since I first met you.
Yeah, we've been through a lot. Yeah, I guess.
You were really an angry guy. Agree?
Wow, that's pretty good assessment, I guess. And I
always felt that there was a demon brewing underneath the surface, but you knew it and fought it and kept it at bay. A lot of that came from what we read about in Lone Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why would you, because now you went back to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you dig it back up again?
Well, it was just one of those things that I don't have to dig very far. It's always kind of, it's there. It's always there. It's a constant reminder. But the new book kind of filled in a lot of gaps that were in Lone Survivor. It completes the circle. It finishes it out. It tells you what happened, how it went down. It finishes out my life in the military. I went back to war, dealt with that in Iraq.
You didn't just go back. You didn't just go back to the military. You went to the worst place of all.
Yeah, I guess I drew top card on that one. I went into Ramadi in 06, 07. It was pretty bad. It was horrible, actually. I thought I had experienced war before. Obviously, I'd been in Iraq before, Afghanistan and stuff like that. But Ramadi was it was a special place.
Can you give any perspective on now, what's happening in Iraq now, and Is it worth it, Marcus?
You know, I had people ask me all the time. That was a question I would get, like, I know why we're in Afghanistan, or then I'd have some people say, we're still in Afghanistan. I had no idea that we were still there, you know, because everybody focused on Iraq. And people would ask me, like, why are we there? And trust me, it's a tough question to answer, I guess. You know, I would get mission briefs, and I'd be like, okay, this is why we're here, this is our business, this is what we're doing. We'd accomplish it, or it would go away, then here's the next one. And I finally had to find my own reason for being over there. You know, I remember being in a house, we had taken it down, we were doing our business as usual, and there was a mother in there and she had 2 daughters, but her 4 boys and her husband had all been slaughtered. And she was just like, thank you so much for being here, thanks for helping us out, and saying, you don't know what it's like over here, you know, just don't give up on us. And that right there solidified it for me, because the United States helps. We help people everywhere.
I know.
You know, it doesn't matter what kind of famine, whatever it is. People just say, you know, in the war over here, well, yeah, it's a war over there because they're killing us. You know, and yeah, we're over there trying to help them. So, I mean, look at another country. We're over in another country trying to help them feed the people. If they started killing us, would that be called a war? We need to back out of there then? You know, it's kind of that, I guess it's all on how you define it. But if you think about it that way, it alleviated a lot of that stress for all of us.
So, in the book, you talk about you thought you'd be dead by 40.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Why?
Because my brother and I, we ran that ragged edge. You know, our life motto is, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. And we thought that the job we were doing, and especially with 2 wars going on, you know, how do you live to see 40?
You said last night that it is, you're tired of victimhood.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things where, and don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying this in any way, because I know there's some guys that are really messed up and have problems with it, but one of the things is if you sit around and listen to the doctors and to people telling you that you're jacked up, you're supposed to be messed up, you know, here, there's no way it's not your fault, you're messed up, you know, then you start to think like that, you start to feel like that. My brother's the one that slapped this sense into me. He's the one that said that. I mean, he came out of it like a raging bull. He's just like, I'm tired of dealing with this crap. Quit telling me I'm sick. I'm not sick. I'm fine. You know, I know what I did for God and country, and that was part of it. That's history. You know what? I'm good. Leave me alone. You know, and he got away from that. And he just,
how do you know where the difference is between? I mean, because a lot of people won't deal with it. I know a lot of guys like you. I mean, I'll cry at a Kleenex commercial. You won't, and a lot of guys in your position hold it back.
Well,
and say, I'm fine, when you're not. I mean, you are, but you're not. You have to recognize it and then move on.
I think that's that whole tough guy mentality. You know, I'm too proud to admit that I have a problem kind of deal. So, you know, I listen to the doctors and everybody tell me that I'm supposed to be messed up, and this is the reason why I'm messed up. You know, and I was like, all right, that's the fact, and that's the fact. All right, I'm messed up, but I'm not going to sit there and act like I am. You know, I'm gonna move forward. I'm trying to fix it. You know, I'm gonna try to get better, and you just work hard at that. You know, and every day of my life now, I put all my energy and all my attention into my family. That's my sole purpose in life, is to make sure that they're happy, and that I provide for them till the day I die. And that's kind of my new mission set, you know, and I don't have time to focus on the bad days and everything like that. And I'm not going to say that they don't show up, you know, I mean, you know just as well as anybody. I mean, you've seen it. I stay at your house, for God's sakes, you know that. I deal with it when it comes, you know, and I have buddies that I call. I'm like, hey, look, having a bad day, you know, have you ever had to deal with this? You know, what'd you do? Or, you know, I just call my brother up in the middle of the night. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And, you know, you don't have to say exactly what's happening, but a phone call in the middle of the night, you're just like, all right, I was having a bad night, and we're talking about some obscure thing.
Right.
I understand why you're calling me. It's saying it without saying it. And that's how the guys like in my community deal with it.
Tell me the one story in the book that you hope people take away.
You know, service, as we were writing, it started to have double meaning, triple meaning. You know, there's just so many concepts behind the whole thing. And I think service, I want people to know that service isn't just in military uniform, you know, not just service to your country through carrying a weapon and fighting wars or anything. Service is to your community, it's service to God, it's service to your family. You know, it's not about yourself, it's about other people. You know, don't be so short-sighted to where all you think about is yourself. You know, you concentrate on the betterment of everything else. And I mean, I think a country would really blossom with that kind of thought process. You know what I mean?
That's a new concept.
Yeah, I don't focus on myself. I focus on everybody else. And when everything else gets better, I'm part of that. So I'll get better as well. You know, and
it's amazing. My father said to me, I was feeling bad for myself this like 15 years ago, and he said, "Oh my gosh, you're right. You've just been so wronged your whole life." And I was just whining to him. And the point was, get outside of yourself and stop seeing everything as such a big problem, because it's a blessing. Those things are actually a blessing. It puts you where you are. Now get outside of yourself and stop worrying about you.
Yeah.
Start thinking about others.
Exactly right. I mean, my life's, I'm so messed up that I don't even want to think about myself, so I concentrate on everything else, trying to make everybody else happy and helping everything else out, because I don't want to deal with myself.
Last thing, because Rigby is a relative new dog. When we were on at Fox, this audience followed the story a bit. Update?
Yeah, I owe you a lot for that, and everybody who watches the show, thanks for helping me out, you know.
You had a lot of people praying for you. In case people don't know, some really nasty teenage kids came and shot your dog for sport.
Well, they beat her with a bat, too. I didn't know that. I found that out the day of court when I was on the witness stand, that they had beat her with a baseball bat.
Oh my God.
And then shot her. And that kind of set me off. You know, it was everything I could do to hold back and not kind of unleash the rage, so to speak.
Because if people don't know, Daisy was your service dog.
She was,
helped you get through. I mean,
when I got back, when I first got back, I got her.
So tell me what's the update? What happened to the guys?
The one guy, 2 years in jail, prison, and then the other guy, 5 years probation. So, you know, a guy, any guy like that who kills animals for fun or whatnot, he's going to screw up again.
Oh yeah, psychopath.
Yeah, exactly. So, the other two guys, nothing. I never even saw them ever again.
Oh, I bet.
After I stopped looking for them, I found them. I did find them, but I didn't. After that, I kind of.
All right. The name of the book is Service. If you are a fan of the lone survivor, this fills in the gaps. It tells you about the heroes that went and looked and eventually got you back into the air and into out of harm's way, and then put you back into harm's way by going back.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a good point. Name of the book is Service, available everywhere. Marcus Luttrell.
The TRS Files, True Tax Resolution Stories.
Hi, I'm Stuart B. I'm in the insurance industry, and I'm from Southern California. I faced a potential liability of $106,000. Tax resolution services settled for $9,200.
If you owe the IRS over $20,000 or more in back taxes, have unfiled returns, or are under audit, call Tax Resolution Services now, 888-7804-TAX, or visit taxresolution.com/GBTV.
Hi everyone, this is Amelia from FreedomWorks, here to invite you to a very special event. FreePAC is a national gathering of Americans interested in restoring freedom. This year's event will feature speeches from Glenn Beck, Dick Armey, Matt Kibbe, and many of the biggest names in the freedom movement. So go to freepac.com today to pre-register and help restore liberty in your community and across the nation.
Okay, so has anybody actually started saving for college yet?
Oh, not me.
No, you got time.
Oh, no, we actually started.
You have?
Really? Sure. We figure you start saving a little now, or you'll borrow a lot later on.
Yeah, but how did you even know where to start? Oh, I found out about the Gerber Life College Plan.
Call now for free information on the Gerber Life College Plan. It's easy.
It's pretty much worry-free.
Well, how could it be worry-free? What if something happens with the stock market?
No matter what happens, we get guaranteed safe growth.
So when she's ready for college, the money will be there.
And it doesn't take a lot of money to get started.
For as little as $10 a week, you can start saving for college and get guaranteed growth. Just call now.
Oh, it's a life insurance policy, too.
Oh, that's different.
And if she decides not to go to college, there's no penalty, so she can use the money for anything.
We've got to get started.
Yes, we do, because you're going to college.
Call 1-800-892-3073 for your free information. That's 1-800-892-3073.
Mortgage lenders lied. Banks cheated and committed fraud. If you believe you're the victim of lender negligence, greed, or corruption, if your home is worth less than what you owe, if you're currently in or facing foreclosure, or if you have a sale date, 1-800-513-0934. Our job is to dramatically lower your mortgage balance or lower your interest rate to just 2% fixed for life. Take action now. When you lose your home, it will be too late. 1-800-513-0934.
I'm Eric Stakelbeck. Thanks for spending the last hour with me, and thanks to Glenn and GBTV for having me. You know, I know we talked about a lot of heavy stuff tonight, but remember, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Good night, America.
Breaking news tonight. We got real news. This just in. Real news from the Blaze.
Welcome to Real News from the Blaze tonight. Today, the Congressional Black Caucus played host to several hundred clergy members from the Conference of National Black Churches. Attorney General Eric Holder made an appearance to talk about the limitations of what can be said to churchgoers during this election cycle as a condition of a church's tax-exempt status. And he also said that Republican-backed voter ID laws, well, they threaten civil rights. While Democrats insist the event was on the up and up, some are saying that it walked the fine line. Essie, what do we know?
Well, Amy, first of all, who is the old guy in Jedediah's seat?
Oh, well, hello.
The old guy? Did she just call me the old guy?
This would be our boss, Glenn Beck, of
Welcome.
course.
Welcome.
Welcome.
I couldn't be in town without stopping by and saying hi. And
It's good to have you here.
oh, really?
It is. You are markedly older than Jedediah, who usually fills that seat.
Wow. Wow.
So I guess
back to business. Do I actually have to do a story now with my boss across from me?
On to the next segment. Yes, go ahead.
Because that's really weird.
Let your timer comment on it, too.
It's really weird. I feel like the principal's in school. Right. So as you laid out, there was a meeting held between the CBC and a Conference of National Black Churches. Eric Holder was there. The IRS was there. Emmanuel Cleaver was talking about it yesterday, and I think we have that sought. I want to set this up so you hear what he was framing this meeting to be yesterday, and then we'll listen to what Holder said today at the meeting. First of all, here's Cleaver.
We are going to, first of all, equip them with the information they need to know about what they can say and what they cannot say in the church that would violate their 501c3 status with the IRS. In fact, we're going to have the IRS administrator there. We're going to have the Attorney General, Eric Holder, there. We're going to have the lawyers organization from around the country at ACLU, all giving ministers guidance on what they can and cannot do.
Wow. If you think that sounds really weird and kind of scary, you're not the only one. But even scarier, here's what actually happened. We have Eric Holder talking at this meeting today.
Where do we go from here? It is time to consider and to discuss where we should focus our energies and where we must place our priorities. Now, like many of you, I would argue that of all the freedoms that we enjoy today, none is more important or more sacred than the right to vote.
All right, so to the table. I find this problematic on three different levels. Politically, I find this problematic because I think it's an abuse of the office of the Attorney General to dispatch him to gin up a race war, essentially, and inject the political process with these kinds of loaded words. And as an aside, I think it's a clear admission that the Obama administration is still very much worried about his base of voting in November. Two, I think this is disturbing from a perspective of race. I thought, A, we were supposed to sort of be beyond race politics. I thought Obama was supposed to be proof of that. And two, clearly the reason they're doing this is to reinforce the narrative that Republicans want to suppress the minority vote. That's problematic to me. And three, from a spiritual or religious point of view, I find this troubling because it's encouraging churches to become political proxies for one party. And I think it really muddies up the division of church and state when you are dispatching the IRS and the Attorney General to churches to say how they can and cannot minister to their congregations. So what do you guys think? Is this appropriate? Is this sort of thing happening on both sides? Does this make you uncomfortable?
I think this is bullcrap. I think this is a message to the evangelicals. I think this is a message to the right. That's what this is. They send the IRS in. Bring it on. Bring it on. It's unconstitutional. You know who the first person in town, the British, went to kill or capture was the pastor. The first place guaranteed in every town that the British took, the place that they always burned to the ground was the church. Many times they would take the congregants, bar them inside, and set it on fire. The British blamed the pastors for the American Revolution, and they were right to do so. Now, you don't have a right, as long as, first of all, if I want to go up and say, as a pastor of my church, you go vote for Barack Obama, they have every right to do that. They have every right to do that. And now I'm leaving that church. If they say vote for Barack Obama or Mitt Romney, I'm LDS. If my church started coming out and saying, you know what, as a Mormon or whatever, you should vote for Mitt Romney, I'd be done. That's not their place. But to teach the principles, and if they choose to say, that's up to them. And if the IRS wants to intimidate, bring it on. I know hundreds of attorneys and thousands of pastors that would love. That's what David Barton tried to do this last fall. Bring it on. They sent the tapes of them endorsing candidates from the pulpit to the IRS.
But Glenn, let me ask you this. Is this really any different, though, than the Bush administration, for example, bringing faith into the White House with the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives and directing taxpayer dollars to preferred churches?
No, I think the
totally
Office
different.
I think the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives. I don't like the church being in with any one party. I think the Christian coalition may have started out as a good thing and it went off the rails. I don't want that.
But the Obama administration has retained an Office of Faith-Based Relations.
Oh yeah, no, and they're much worse. Well, they're much worse. Tell me. I mean, I've seen Jesse Jackson speaking from the pulpit. I've seen Barack Obama speaking from the pulpit. I've seen Bill Clinton delivering the messages of vote for my wife from the pulpit in black churches. And now all of a sudden they need the IRS there?
So here was my process of going through this issue through today. In the beginning, I felt this was very unseemly. I looked at this entire process and said, I don't like the concept of the Congressional Black Caucus or the Democratic Party, and certainly the Attorney General. I think you make a great point about politicizing, not just politicizing, campaigning from the Attorney General's office. But regarding the religious issue and how you drew the parallel to the British coming down on the churches when they came over, I think the analogy stretched out from that starting point is the entire concept of limiting churches' ability to endorse candidates. The more I thought about this, the more I think, why shouldn't pastors be able to say, I endorse Mitt Romney, I endorse Barack Obama? As it stands right now, they cannot.
They can.
Well,
That's
the IRS
misreading of this.
They will lose their nonprofit status.
No, they won't.
501c3.
No, they won't. That's what you think. It was put in the 1950s. It's never been challenged in court. And in fact, that's why 1,000 pastors this last year got together, endorsed candidates, taped it. They all got together on one Sunday, each of them in their own church, taped it, and sent it to the IRS and said, come get me.
Whether or not it's been challenged. Whether or not it's been challenged.
There is no limit. It's in here. They're trying to make you believe. They're intimidating. It will never stand in court.
Perhaps it hasn't been challenged, but the 501c3, interesting you brought up the 50s, it was brought in by Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was traveling around hearing pastors over the radio essentially advocating for that he wouldn't be reelected. And he got so mad he set up this IRS process of sanctioning 501c3s and putting the condition on it, you shall not endorse. You can talk about issues.
And Holder quoted him today, by the way.
That is the opposite of the separation of church and state.
Right, I agree.
The reason why we have that, and we don't, but the reason why we have that whole concept is because we want the church to remain separate from the government. The church should challenge the government. It should challenge politicians. Get out of my church.
For me, this was another example of nothing being sacred to this administration at all. And in fact, even the separation of church and state, which usually when liberals talk, it's their favorite part of the Constitution that's not in the Constitution. Usually this is a bedrock principle of liberalism. Well, they're willing to bend that, just as they're willing to bend issues of national security, whatever the case may be, for political gain. And I think that's what you see here. They're willing to pretend that they don't even care about a separation of church and state because it goes to the base on this issue.
If you adopt the position that both Glenn and I have adopted now, which is basically this restriction should not be in place, that churches should be able to endorse, and therefore candidates should be able to seek the endorsements of churches, what's wrong with what they did today?
Well, they don't take that position. They're saying they're bringing the IRS down to threaten people who take that position.
The real challenge is when Mitt Romney wins, when he wins, will the people on our side be as unethical and as slimy as the people on the left? You've hit it right on the head. This is the opposite of what they always say. Right. This is the exact opposite. And they're going into churches with the seal of all of the offices, the president, DOJ, and they don't have a problem with it.
What could be scarier than that? The DOJ and the IRS. I mean, if you want to frighten people into silence on issues, and this is who you have show up.
Well, that was my objection of it, was the point you raised, which is the politicization of the Attorney General,
and
our strongest law enforcement office in the land, and the IRS, our tax collector, and then participating in this, church-based political event. Church-based politics, I think it happens. We saw it happen with the Bush administration. And in fact, in 2004, the Bush-Cheney campaign went to churches and solicited their directories and then contacted those church members and recruited them to vote. We saw this happening with the sitting president, right?
You've seen it with Obama time and time. Look at any speech given by Jeremiah Wright. Are you telling me that's not political?
Right. So to me, the objection is not political speech by churches,
I think
but the Attorney General.
If you're an average citizen, are there two scarier figures in your mind? I mean, they might be horsemen of the apocalypse if you're going to look at the nation's law enforcer and the tax collector. I mean, this is scary stuff. And I think you're right. This was meant to be an intimidation and also meant to be messaging. Republicans are out to suppress your vote. Republicans are out to remove you from the process. Here is what you need to know. Wink, wink, this is not political.
And there was no pretense of this being anything but partisan. There was no effort. There's no effort that we know of to go and talk to other church groups about this. I mean, you think about how Supreme Court justices have to live their lives. Even the conception that they could be conflicted on an issue, they should have to step aside. They should have to recuse themselves. But in this case, you have Eric Holder, who's clearly drawing a partisan line.
I'd rather have Obama go and make this statement, frankly, than Eric Holder. I find that more offensive that Eric Holder is going instead of Obama.
I mean, are we really arguing that that Eric Holder is somehow or another hasn't already done this? He was with Al Sharpton and helping him raise money and saying, you're a good friend of this administration, et cetera, when Al Sharpton was out in the streets on the Trayvon Martin case.
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing. Eric Holder, you want to talk about, he says we're cowards as a nation. You know who the biggest cowards are? Almost everybody in this administration. Eric Holder is a coward because he hides behind a pretense, and now he's hiding behind the seal. Say who you really are.
Right.
And say what you really believe.
I'd love to attack this issue at that level of pretense. Just do away with the nonsense that churches can't endorse. Otherwise, you're going to have these hypocritical hunts. We should just, it's silly that the Westboro Baptist Church can protest a soldier's funeral, but can't endorse a candidate.
Right. Very good point. Well, another gain for the Tea Party, this time in good old Texas. What could it mean for the future of establishment politics? We'll have that discussion when we come back.
Food independence, emergency preparedness, self-reliance. MyPatriotSupply.com. Get our survival seed vault and feed your family from your own garden for just $37.95. Our non-hybrid heirloom seeds are genuinely American, just like you. Your survival needs and survival seeds are at MyPatriotSupply.com. MyPatriotSupply.com. Self-reliance. MyPatriotSupply.com.
Bringing a firearm into your home is one of the most important decisions you can make. If you are considering gun ownership, CheaperThanDirt.com is here to help you make a responsible and informed choice. We understand it is a personal decision how you choose to protect your family. We offer thousands of choices of firearms, ammunition, and accessories to suit your individual needs. Be responsible, be proactive, and exercise your Second Amendment right. Find us online at CheaperThanDirt.com. That's CheaperThanDirt.com.
Okay, so has anybody actually started saving for college yet?
Oh, not me. No, you got time.
Oh, no, we actually started.
You have?
Really? Sure. We figure you start saving a little now, or you'll borrow a lot later on.
Yeah, but how did you even know where to start?
Oh, I found out about the Gerber Life College Plan.
Call now for free information on the Gerber Life College Plan. It's easy.
It's pretty much worry-free.
Well, how could it be worry-free? What if something happens with the stock market?
No matter what happens, we get guaranteed safe growth.
So when she's ready for college, the money will be there.
And it doesn't take a lot of money to get started.
For as little as $10 a week, you can start saving for college and get guaranteed growth. Just call now.
Oh, it's a life insurance policy, too.
Oh, that's different.
And if she decides not to go to college, there's no penalty, so she can use the money for anything.
We've got to get started.
Yes, we do, because you're going to college.
Call 1-800-892-3073 for your free information. That's 1-800-892-3073.
In addition to handing Mitt Romney the GOP nomination for president last night, Texas played host to a highly anticipated Senate primary showdown. After a contentious several months of campaigning, Republican Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst failed to garner the 50% of the vote needed to avoid a runoff election with Tea Party favorite Ted Cruz. So the pair will face off again on July 31st. Many consider the race yet another indication that the Tea Party remains a force to be reckoned with on the national scene and that bottom-up politics is here to stay. The president of FreedomWorks, Matt Kibbe, joined us on the show last night to discuss those politics, and he's here with us again to discuss this Texas primary.
I can't stay away.
All right, so I guess the top question is this an example of Tea Party bottom-up politics, or is the Tea Party becoming maybe the new establishment?
Well, I hope we do become the new establishment in the sense that we get to have more success like this. But this is a perfect example of the old rules being broken. David Dewhurst has all the money in the world. He has all the name ID in the world. And every important politician in the state has endorsed him. And yet he can't get to 50%. That's because the activists on the ground have a different idea. Ted Cruz has the values and the political skills to win. And I think that combination, people, the shareholders, and a candidate we're supporting, the establishment can't beat that.
All right.
Hey, Matt, why is Ted Cruz so much better than David Dewhurst?
Ted Cruz is a constitutional conservative. He actually has read the Constitution. He actually believes it. He understands it. And he has been fighting for these values since he was in high school, which I'm personally fond of because I got involved in this stuff when I was a strange young child.
Is that an endorsement of Ted Cruz's biography? In other words, I need someone to help me understand the difference between Tea Party and establishment, however basic that might be at this table. In the context of David Dewhurst versus Ted Cruz, explain to me how one guy is Tea Party and one guy's establishment.
Because as a Texan, you've taken some umbrage with Ted Cruz's popularity, yes?
I think Ted Cruz is great. No, I look at Ted Cruz's biography and I see the same things you do. And he's an amazing guy. But I want to know what's wrong with David Dewhurst.
Okay.
David Dewhurst has helped preside over a massive expansion of the budget in Texas. He's been there for a long time. He ran the Senate. He has some responsibility for that. He tried to pass a behind-the-scenes, under-the-radar state income tax, which in Texas, that's not how they roll. And more importantly, the question is, what are you going to do in office? Are you going to vote the right way? Or are you actually going to be a legislative entrepreneur? Are you going to understand what these ideas are and actually spend the energy to translate them into something? Put your neck on the line. I think that's the difference between an establishment guy that will always vote the way the wind is blowing and someone that actually believes in it and is willing to actually bet their career on it. And I think Ted Cruz is one of those guys.
It's a gamble, right? I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate the questions here. This is something I struggled with, and it's not Texas. It's not all about Texas. It's about this. This is an idea that needs fleshing out from a national stage, I think.
Yeah.
Will you not answer this for me just 1 second? And maybe you, because you've been in Texas now for a couple months, you might know this. I want to present to you two candidates, okay, quickly. One is worth $200 million. He was in the CIA, in the Air Force. Sounds like you know the answer to this question. He made his money in the energy industry. He's been described by his fellow Republicans as weird, but not as weird as he used to be, and called Bill Clinton's half-brother. The other went to Princeton and Harvard, was a law clerk for William Rehnquist, and has been a Solicitor General for, I don't know, some dozen years. Which one's establishment and which one's Tea Party, and why?
Well, I think when you're talking about establishment, you're talking about what somebody believes. I think what you're doing is sort of conflating. Yeah, I mean, we were talking, well, ideology in the case of Dewhurst, it's also a voting record. I mean, actually, what he's done as governor, I should say. But yeah, the biography of these guys, when you line them up, they're different, but you have two very capable individuals. I mean, this isn't a race between night and day.
Let me just say this, because you know this answer, but the viewer doesn't. The first one I described.
Oh,
is
you were
David
asking
Dewhurst,
that? Yeah.
And the second one is Ted Cruz.
Right, but you're a Texan, so you understand as much as I do what's drawn me to Texas. What draws me to the Tea Party mentality, and it's the fundamental difference here. And one is the establishment will play ball. Just play ball. Just play ball. Somebody steps to the plate, it's got a lot of money. Look, I'll support you. Just help me out here, over here. And they'll do it. And it'll all be on the up and up, and it'll all be fine, and we'll play ball because this is the system the way it is. A Tea Party guy says, no, I'm sorry, I don't play ball. I don't play ball. This is right. This is wrong. And if I lose, I lose. I'm not going to play ball.
Cruz sets himself up as a fighter also. He says that. And I think that's how he tries to make a big distinction with Dewhurst. He says that as somebody, I think he's argued 34 cases in front of the Supreme Court, oral arguments. This is someone who believes very deeply in certain principles and, to Glenn's point, is not willing to bend those to sort of go along to get along. So that's the distinction.
Spitzer also set himself up as a fighter. So did Anthony Weiner. I mean, this
well,
is
a fighter
not
for conservative.
Tea Party
no, hold
mentality.
on. A fighter for conservative principles. I mean, we're talking about one side or the other.
Yeah.
It's not just fighting to be a fighter. It's fighting for equal justice, equal rules. Nobody has extra access to me or to the law or anything else. You're a big supporter of mine? Great. Sometimes I'm going to piss you off, sometimes I'm not, but I'm not coming your way because you're a supporter of mine.
Let me just ask this one last question. Tell me if it carries any weight. I called some of my buddies back in Texas. I said, who do you like? You like Ted Cruz? You like David Dewhurst? They're not that political, these guys I called. They're out there making money. They're out there trying to make a living and make it in the world. Be successes. This is the response I got. I don't know. It'd be a little hard for me to vote for the lifelong bureaucrat over the guy that's a self-made 200 millionaire.
So let me ask.
Is that not a valuable
He's
thing?
a lawyer. I think Cruz is now a lawyer in private practice. And being a lawyer doesn't necessarily make you a bureaucrat, in fairness. I mean, he did work as the Solicitor General for the state of Texas. That's maybe a bureaucratic position.
Right, but it
for
seems
quite a while.
Like, it seems like we're conflating the idea between someone being an insurgent and someone really being a candidate of the grassroots. So I look at Ted Cruz, he's an insurgent candidate, but let's face it, a lot of his support is national establishment. Club for Growth, which has been around a long time. We've got Jim DeMint, Sarah Palin. These are national figures, not necessarily
is a
Texans.
Establishment guy, isn't he? If
Yes,
you judge by
right.
your way, but
Right.
he's not.
Well,
He
that's the
hasn't
thing,
sold
Glenn.
his
What
soul.
is establishment?
Establishment
Because by
is,
that
again-
standard, you're exactly right. Jim DeMint is ripe to be challenged from a
Right.
grassroots guy we've never heard of.
Non-establishment is somebody who plays by the Constitution. I mean, look, you tell me James Madison. Was James Madison an establishment guy? Was Thomas Jefferson, when he ran, I can't vote for him, he's establishment. He wrote the Declaration of Independence. Look how long he's been there. No.
Ron Paul's been a congressman for a long time. Is he an
Is he
establishment guy?
So here's where I challenge you. You define establishment as somebody, or non-establishment, as somebody who abides by the Constitution. And I disagree with you. I think you've divorced yourself from the concept of establishment. I like how you defined it. I want a guy that abides by the Constitution. But I'm not sure that necessarily equates to someone who is not establishment.
No,
I think you could
I
have an
think
establishment guy who abides by the Constitution.
I think you're going, I think this is part of the paradigm change. Am I establishment? A lot of people say I'm establishment. I have my own network. So am I establishment?
You're establishing an establishment.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at CNN. I've worked at Fox. We've established our own network. We've got our own bureaus. We have reporters. We have everything that the establishment has. We don't play by the same rules.
Look, in the end, when you brought up the point about the Constitution and you brought up ideology, to me, that's what it is. It has to be about ideology. It can't be about biography, and that's what I'm pushing back on. This Tea Party versus establishment thing has been totally muddled as far as the definition. You gave the best answer, Matt, when you brought up the wage taxation, which is essentially a revenue, an income tax in Texas. That's the best point made at the table, that David Dewhurst actually advocated for a policy that doesn't fit with the ideology.
It's a stealth income tax.
But let me take it one step further, because the Tea Party ethos is not about electing the right guy. The Tea Party ethos is about all of us taking responsibility for who we send to Washington. So it's not about finding the perfect candidate, the next Ronald Reagan. We have to make sure that we hold these guys accountable, because they're the proxy vote. We're the shareholders. It's our
And
responsibility.
that isn't true. I mean, the Tea Party got a little burned with a couple of candidates who were maybe a little too grassroots or a little too outside the mainstream, and whereas someone like Cruz, with his biography, with his ideology, no one can malign this guy's abilities, his record.
He didn't make this up. I mean, he's been doing this a long time.
He's been doing this a long
Scott
time.
Brown. He's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, it
So
just has to be.
Is Scott Brown a Tea Party guy?
He was. He was a Tea Party guy. Tea Party support.
And yet he's a fairly moderate
Right.
Republican.
So it's not about, again, it's about principles. It's not about people. People will always let you down. You don't go to church because the pastor is so great. You go to church because you believe in the principles the pastor is talking about and the scriptures are telling you, and God is. The pastor most likely will let you down at some point. If you're going to church because of the personality, you're in trouble.
And I like that. Okay, focus on the principles, because if you focus on who's grassroots and who's inside the establishment, you open yourself up to, you hinted around it, but Christine O'Donnell.
Why is Barack? Why you have the same thing with Barack Obama? Why is Barack Obama at what 44% approval? Because people like him. How about we talk about Marxism? Who cares if you like him? I don't care if you like him or you don't like a candidate. There's a lot of people that I'm like, oh, I don't like this guy. I don't want to be around him. I don't want to hang out around. But he's brilliant. He has solid principles. He's the guy.
So let me ask this of you, Essie. Is there a danger that Ted Cruz is seen as too much of the Tea Party? So, for example, Murdoch in Indiana, who won in his primary, beat Dick Lugar, the establishment. He had kind of a sort of danced around the Tea Party thing a bit, and even Mitch Daniels said he was not a Tea Party candidate. He was very much Republican establishment as far as Indiana is concerned. So does Ted Cruz need to burnish his Texan bona fides?
It's a danger either way, because as we've, I think, all agreed, the ideology, the movement, Tea Partyism is bigger than any one candidate. And we've seen this not just with Christine O'Donnell, but with Tea Party support for Newt Gingrich, inexplicably.
This is the source of a lot of my frustration.
Inexplicably. We've had this conversation
because it was
before.
so ill-defined.
But because the movement institutionally is so new, these misses mean a lot.
But that's why the 9/12 Project was started with values and principles, because I knew it would go
candidates.
wrong. And this is what FreedomWorks has been doing. You guys are, I watch these guys like crazy, because I trust no one in this business.
Right.
They have stated the principles and are going for the principles, and you can see it in their record.
And you have
There's
to,
people that you
because
guys support you don't like, I'm sure.
Oh,
but
the movement
but their principles.
The movement
are
is young and vulnerable, and so to establish its credibility, it has to be bigger than these candidates, and it really does have to be careful with who they go out and endorse.
But
so the danger is for the Tea Party and Ted Cruz.
Does Cruz represent sort of a maturation, you think, of that process of the Tea Party actually being able to make sure they not only rally
Murdoch
behind...
does as well.
Murdoch does as well, yeah. I mean, I think we're
Absolutely.
seeing that now. We're not seeing the Sharon Angle, Christine O'Donnell stuff.
Were shopping for the right guy at the very beginning of the process, so you didn't end up at the end of the game desperately looking for someone to say, hey, maybe Newt's that guy. Well, guess what? That's not how you do it. You start at the beginning, you find a guy that has the principles and the political skills to win. By the way, one last thing that we're facing now, and this is a good problem, these are growing pains, is the fact that every politician is now talking the talk. So how do you find the real guys versus the phonies?
That's right.
Because politicians are responding to
Gingrich was one of them, I think, for a while.
Can I say something? One candidate that's not talking the talk and walking the walk is Mitt Romney. What in your wildest dreams are you doing going out for the weekend with Newt Gingrich and Donald Trump?
Matt Kibbe, you said that the Tea Party is willing to back Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney doesn't understand us yet, and I think
But he understands Donald Trump?
No,
well,
it's not that he doesn't understand
He thinks Donald Trump is us.
It's not that he doesn't understand you. He doesn't understand that he needs you. That's what's so obtuse to me.
But did you hear that? That was so fascinating. He thinks Donald Trump is us.
This is the Tea
Right.
Party.
That's, wow.
So that's
going to have to change.
Couldn't be more wrong.
No.
Can I just say something? I've wanted to say this to you guys forever. Every time I watch this show and sitting here with you, this is the smartest panel on television. It really is. This is the best dialogue on television. I am so proud to be associated with all of you guys. Really, sincerely. Smartest, would you agree?
I agree.
Smartest on television. Thank you.
Thank you.
Except for Will.
Well, Matt, thanks again for joining us. And after the break, the smartest panel in television, we'll talk about the U.S. Census figures that show that nearly half of all Americans received some form of government benefit last year. The alarming details are coming up.
When the government threatened their freedom, he was the last to believe in their cause.
You want me to make an army out of a group of peasants?
But became the first willing to die for it.
Today we're going to send a message. Freedom is our wives, our children, and we will defend it or die trying. Que viva Cristo Rey!
Andy Garcia, Eva Longoria. For Greater Glory, rated R, in theaters this Friday.
Preparation, focus, hard work. It's a personal commitment. It's what drives me. It gives me the confidence to look my opponent in the eye and say, game on. Preparing for life's future challenges is just as important. Food Insurance Emergency Food Supply gives me the same assurance that I'm ready for whatever comes my way. Preparation is everything. Order today at foodinsurance.com.
Attention those on Medicare with diabetes. You may be eligible for an upgraded meter.
If you're tired of stabbing your fingertips to test your blood glucose, we have news that could change your life. If you're on Medicare with diabetes, then you need to know there's an alternative method for checking your blood glucose every day. You don't need to stab your fingertips anymore. The Embrace meter from Diabetes Care Club is easier to use and nearly painless. And the best news is that Diabetes Care Club would love to send you one of these meters. This method hurts less, and because you can see and hear your results, it may be easier to understand.
Your blood glucose reading is 89.
Call now to find out why. Nearly 250,000 patients have joined Diabetes Care Club. Membership is free, so is the call.
Call 1-800-213-7027.
Talk to Diabetes Care Club. You'll be glad you did.
Now, it may sound too bad to be true, but a recent Wall Street Journal report uncovered census numbers that highlight the fact that close to half of all American households have at least one member receiving government benefits. It's tomorrow's news tonight, and for the details, let me bring in Joel Gerke from the Washington Examiner. Joel, welcome.
Thank you, Amy. Good to be here.
Good to have you. So I read that 49.1% is the exact number of households that are on government benefits. What type of benefits are we talking about exactly?
A wide array of things, anything from Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, food stamps. We've heard a lot about that lately. Other unemployment benefits generally.
All right. So, Joel, how much of this can be attributed to the recession, and you would expect these numbers to go up, versus just demographic changes that we've got all these baby boomers that are retiring that we need to support, apparently?
Some of it can certainly be attributed to the recession. It has grown sharply at a faster rate than any time in the last 30 years since 2008 or so. But these programs have been on the rise since rising steadily since 1983. I think was the chart that Izzo over at the Wall Street Journal put together. And with the baby boomers retiring, that those numbers are going to increase, and they're not going to get any smaller. You know, unlike unemployment, maybe where someone might go on unemployment and then come off. When you retire and go on Social Security or Medicare, it's just going to be there.
All right, Joel, so when I was looking at these numbers, it sort of was a new way of looking at the entitlement spending problem. I guess I'd be a lot more worried if we were talking about working-age people, middle-class families that were becoming Europeans and just wanting to live on the dole. What this really is millions and millions of boomers retiring and Social Security and Medicare exploding.
That's right.
Would you agree with that?
That's a significant driver. Yeah, that's a significant driver. Is the retirement that's only going to get worse. There is some issue here with the recession as people go on unemployment, they stay on long-term unemployment, and then perhaps take early retirement. That exacerbates the issue. But it's a lot of retirees.
All right, Joel. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you joining us and sharing your insights.
Thanks, Amy. Good to be here.
Thanks a lot. Of course, we'll have the complete analysis of this rise in government dependency on tomorrow's program. You don't want to miss it. Up next, a report card for the entitlement generation. Well, everybody gets an A, apparently. The details after the break.
Hi, everyone. This is Amelia from FreedomWorks, here to invite you to a very special event. Free Pack is a national gathering of Americans interested in restoring freedom. This year's event will feature speeches from Glenn Beck, Dick Armey, Matt Kibbe, and many of the biggest names in the freedom movement. So go to freepack.com today to pre-register and help restore liberty in your community and across the nation.
It's an unpredictable world. Disaster can strike at any time. That's why stove in a can should always be part of your emergency survival plan. With power out and gas lines down, stove in a can cooks your food and rapidly boils water. Portable, safe, and easy to use. With an all-natural waterproof fuel source you can store indefinitely. Say goodbye to dangerous propane, lighter fluid, and gas. Don't wait until it's too late. Stock up today and protect your family. Special bundle offers available at stoveinacan.com.
The TRS Files, True Tax Resolution Stories.
Hi, I'm Stuart B. I'm in the insurance industry and I'm from Southern California. I faced a potential liability of $106,000. Tax resolution services settled for $9,200.
If you owe the IRS over $20,000 or more in back taxes, have unfiled returns, or are under audit, call Tax Resolution Services now, 888-780-4TAX, or visit taxresolution.com/GBTV.
Are you a homeowner 62 or older? Are you looking to access cash from your home or eliminate your monthly mortgage payment? How about both? Then call the number on your screen. With a reverse mortgage, there are no monthly mortgage payments. You will still own your home, and you will have many options on how to receive your cash. Call now. It's time to get all the facts, and Reverse Mortgage Solutions is here to help.
Call 855-200-1039. That's 855-200-1039.
Welcome back, everybody. The Education Department approved 8 more waivers to the No Child Left Behind program yesterday, allowing states like Ohio and North Carolina more flexibility to design curriculums that best fit their school district's needs. But flexibility, it seems, can be a double-edged sword. The most recent example of it, cutting the other way, reports showing that many colleges and universities using that very same flexibility to inflate student grades. An A grade, once a symbol of hard work and excellence, well, now it increasingly stands for A for average. Will Kane, how is it now that the A has become the gentleman's C?
We're going to talk about why, but let's first put this problem into context again. This is coming from a story out of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune where a professor, a chemistry professor named Christopher Kramer at the University of Minnesota is making some waves about his alarm over a condition that is infecting our campuses. Those are his adjectives. The condition? Grade inflation. Let me illustrate it for you. Since 1998, starting in 1998, students get more A's than any other grade. In 1940, 15% of the grades handed were A's. In 2008, that had risen to 43%.
We are so much smarter.
We are getting so much smarter.
I feel it happening as we sit
I
here.
do.
Is that A adjusted for inflation?
This is the inflation. This is the inflation. We have another chart that can show you exactly what happened with these grades. Let's put up the distribution of grades. The red line there is A's, and this is a chart that goes from 1940 to 2008. You can see at the same time, look at C's. C's is the green line, going down, down, down. Similarly, in 1960, the average grade was 2.27. That was a C+. That was on a 0 to 4-point scale. The average student got a 2.27 grade point average. And that was pretty consistent starting in the 1920s up until that time. But since the 1960s, the average grade, and we have a chart that can illustrate this as well, has risen to 3.1, a B+ grade point average. That's from gradeinflation.com. Now, what's the point of all of these charts and this observation that we have grade inflation other than just these darn kids and their entitled grades? It's 2 problems, and this professor at the University of Minnesota points these out. It's that we are now putting out average students into the world, thinking they are exceptional and therefore unprepared to deal with the inevitable disappointments of the real world. And second, you're basically pulling a fast one on employers. You're selling students out there as exceptional that are actually average. So, is this a problem? Is this a real-world problem? For that, I'm going to first ask Lori Roman. Lori Roman's going to join us here. She's the director of school choice at the U.S. Department of Education in the Bush administration. She was at that time. So, Lori, you heard me just describe this grade inflation problem. Is it a problem in your mind?
It is. In fact, before I went into the U.S. Department of Education, I taught at a college for 6 years. And I've also been in executive management in the auto industry and other places, so I see both sides of this, from the employer side, from the U.S. Department of Education side, and from the college professor side. And grade inflation is real and it is rampant, but it starts way before college.
Yeah, why is it happening? Why are we incurring this epidemic of grade inflation?
Well, it is not the problem. It is the byproduct of the problem, which is that we're not educating children properly. And then when we're not educating them, we tend to cover it up. And we don't want to reflect on ourselves as adults that we're not doing a good job. So I think, although it looks like a benefit to the children, it hurts the kids. It helps the adults. It makes the adults feel good. They did a great job. Look, they educated the children when maybe they didn't. When I taught at a college, my freshman students would come in with great grades from suburban high schools, and some of them couldn't write complete sentences. They didn't know how to use a library. They couldn't research a basic 5-paragraph essay. They were completely lacking in skills. So the grade inflation started in high school, and they expected it when they got to college.
So, Lori,
and
is it a
I
problem?
fought it.
Is it a problem? You described it as a problem coming from the teachers, from the educators, from the adults, or is it a problem coming from the students? We have a quote from another professor at the University of Minnesota, an anthropology professor, and she said this: the students are paying for it. They worked really hard and they put in the time, and therefore they think they should get a good grade. She's essentially linking this inflation in tuition, the fact that colleges are getting much more expensive, to students therefore demanding good grades. I paid for them.
Well, I'll say that the adults train those children to think that way. And I would have students come to me in college and say, you mean you're not going to let me write this paper over again until I get an A, or you're not going to let me retake the exam? And I would say, where did you get a preposterous idea like that? I never got to do that in college. And they would say, well, ever since junior high or high school or elementary school, I've always been able to redo my work until I got a good grade. And I taught business students, and I would try to explain to them, and I would sometimes try to explain to the dean of the college, that I am not doing them any favors if I am preparing them for business in a world where they think they can go out and talk to a client or a boss and have a do-over. That's just not the real world.
So, Glenn, I looked at this story, and I looked at this, and I was like, okay, grade inflation is dumb. Apparently, our students are dumb. We're pushing people into college who probably don't even need to go. They could just get their jobs right out of high school. Is anybody really fooled by this? I mean, when we see these kids at Occupy Wall Street, is anybody fooled that they really earned straight A's?
Oh, I don't think there's such a thing as merit really anymore in our society. I don't think we've raised 2 generations now that just barely have any idea of what merit is. I am thrilled to say I had this conversation with my daughter who's in college now, and she said, you know, she worked really, really hard, and she's so frustrated because the professor will say, you know what, I'm going to throw out your lowest grade, and you know, if you've got all great grades, towards the end, what are you doing? You're not even working anymore. What are you doing? And it doesn't prepare you. Tell me, have I ever, or anybody in this company said, you know what, every 5th show, you do a week a show, and we're just going to forget the bad show you did that week, the one that you weren't prepared, you just sucked at it, and we'll just tell the audience, hey, just forget that one
That was my
show.
Mulligan show. Trust me, I would remember if I had used it or not.
It doesn't happen in life. How about we have every, you know, we look at the 100 cars that come off the line and say, wow, that one didn't even have a steering wheel. Don't worry about it. We don't. That's not the way life is. We're not preparing our children for anything.
But at the same time, we're inflating their expectations about what's going to be waiting.
We're creating slaves.
There are market forces at work, too. Schools now are competing for students in ways that they didn't used to. And there are more of these schools giving degrees that, quite honestly, are sort of shady to begin with. You have all these for-profit schools that are now the subject of actually investigations because they're using federal dollars to just basically shoehorn people through the system. And so schools now use grade inflation as a means to compete with other schools for students to charge them, you know, in the case of NYU, $55,000 a year. Some of these schools are incredibly expensive. And there's big money involved here, too. It's not, you know, there's another component of it.
Well, and as Lori mentioned, this happens early and often. And I want to bring Jeb Bush into this conversation because I think he's particularly apropos here. When he first came out with his A-plus plan in Florida while governor, he was assailed for wanting stricter standards, better testing. And actually, of course, we all came to see that the programs he instituted in Florida raised the level of expectation, especially among minority, Hispanic, and poor students in Florida. And now, states all over the country, and Republicans and Democrats alike, are championing these policies, tough love as they are. And actually, Jeb Bush's plan formed the basis of Romney's new education plan. So I'm asking the table, are we going to see a return to these kinds of tough love policies where we hold kids back?
Look, we have
instead of celebrating mediocrity?
There is no chance of national survival if you don't have critical thinking. We're not teaching critical thinking. Do you know why you know why the debt can be where it is and nobody looks at the debt ceiling and says anything but, oh, we got to fix that? Because there's no critical thinking. There's no challenge anymore in school. It is, what date did this happen? Well, what does that do? You're memorizing stuff that doesn't make any difference.
Well, so then let me put this to Lori. Do we need national standards? Do we need to start controlling grades? I hope you're still with us, Lori. Do we need to start controlling grades through some kind of national standards? You, as part of the Bush administration, were part of the implementation of No Child Left Behind. This professor from the University of Minnesota actually has a standard solution he put out, which is, let's put grades in context. If there's 20 kids in a class and everybody got an A, then we'll say A, but 0 to 100, meaning it basically means nothing. If there are 200 kids in a class and you get a B, but it's qualified as 95 to 100, meaning you were the only one that got a B and it was really good. Is there something like that, a national standard we need to interpret grades or force standards?
Well, I can tell you, having been an official at the U.S. Department of Education firsthand, that national standardized anything in education is not the answer. Getting it more local or back to the states where they can be innovators and try things like Jeb Bush tried is the answer. When you standardize, it is impossible. In fact, I was in charge of implementing parts of No Child Left Behind, which, by the way, I think there were some fantastic motives behind No Child Left Behind. The idea was to try to get the focus back on learning and to get the focus back on competency in some key areas like math and reading. That's a great motive, but as we often see in the federal government, good motives don't always make good policy. And what we found is it doesn't really work. It was subverted and it was perverted sometimes at the local levels as they tried to get out of it. And now what you see with these waivers is they're also trying to get out of it. So the answer is not more standardization, it's not more federal control, it's actually less.
So I think you're going to get total agreement at this table. No one here thinks that a further federalization of education or standardization is going to solve it, but we should just realize that something like grade inflation is a natural byproduct of flexibility.
Class rank or the bell curve would be ways to deal with this, and I think that those are things that people should start to accept as part of this process. I mean,
Higher
people should
standards at the local level.
But I think
but that means that people should know within the local level, within whatever university you're talking about, they should know where you rank among your peers.
I don't agree with that, actually. I think we need to really examine. No, it is. But the question, I think we need to examine, what is college for? Is it a professional school? Is it an apprenticeship? Or is it a place for people to really pursue their intellectual curiosity on a merit-based way?
If you want to study French philosophy, you should be able to think interesting thoughts about living in your parents' basement. I mean, at some point you have to take.
Why do you have to get degrees?
And you don't get a job, right?
Why not?
Right, and when if you don't get that professorship, you have nobody to blame but yourself for your course of study. I mean,
formal education is only useful if it teaches you how to find answers. Because what you're questioning at 21 years old, you're not going to be questioning when you're 50. But I need to be able to have critical thinking skills so I can think my way out of a box. If you want national survival, what made America great was we could think differently. We could evaluate a situation by ourselves and go, well, geez, I can make a better mousetrap than that. And you knew how to do it. You could think differently. We're teaching everybody to think the same.
And I would say, I know plenty of art history majors who are successful bankers on Wall Street.
I'm an art history major.
There you are. There you are.
How's that working out
but
for
I have no head for numbers.
Well, when we're talking about going to the most elite schools in the country,
right.
I think it's less important what you study. If you're talking about going to a for-profit university, a less well-known place, it's more of a means to get a job upon
but I got to
graduation.
tell you, boss, I speak at colleges around the country, and I have to tell you, we got to get them younger. We got to go to high schools and middle schools because they are not being taught civics.
They're getting
critical
them,
thinking.
They're getting them in preschool
Oh, yeah.
now.
Yeah.
It begins.
Yeah.
Stop.
It's bad.
All right. Well, thank you, Lori, for joining us. All right. The Island of Misfits Stories is up next. Stay with us.
Before you hit the polls, see what makes candidate Glenn Beck unelectable.
If you find oil on Mount Rushmore, I will be the first to gladly drill through Teddy Roosevelt's head.
Glenn Beck and the BS of A take the stage for a brand new live comedy tour.
$2 for how much gas? We haven't established that yet. Those are details that you work out after you are elected.
It's unelectable too.
If I may just say, my opponent is a moron.
Because you might as well laugh before you cry. Visit glennbecktours.com for details.
This is the future of America. We're a country going down the tubes. I refuse to believe that courage and compassion are our birthright. Our glory days are over. I'd be lying if I said that we're a strong and vibrant country, that our families and neighbors sustain us. Here's what you should know: the same tired excuses. We no longer have the desire to work hard, the hunger to turn things around, the faith in God to lead us. Across the country, I see in our faces that we're happy to be second rate. I refuse to believe America is the moral leader of the world. This isn't the end. America is the moral leader of the world. I refuse to believe that we're happy to be second rate. Across the country, I see in our faces the faith in God to lead us, the hunger to turn things around, the desire to work hard. We no longer have the same tired excuses. Here's what you should know: that our families and our neighbors sustain us. We are a strong and vibrant country. I'd be lying if I said that our glory days are over. Courage and compassion are our birthright. I refuse to believe that we are a country going down the tubes. This is the future of America.
Every night about this time, we bring you the odds and ends of the news day and a collection of headlines, both incredible and outrageous, in a segment we like to call the Island of Misfit Stories. So, Will Kane, you're up first. What are you starting off?
Not incredible, outrageous enough to keep Glenn. We're losing Glenn, so I'll have to ramp up.
He did say that.
I can go now.
He did say this is the one show or one thing he doesn't complain about. So
that's right. Okay, my story. Arab Americans, are they a disadvantaged minority? The Commerce Department is considering naming Arab Americans as a socially and economically disadvantaged minority group. And then, therefore, they would be eligible for special business assistance. This is going to be chock full of acronyms now. The American Arab Discrimination Committee, the ADC, has petitioned the Commerce Department to be eligible for the Minority Business Development Agency, the MBDA. They say they suffer discrimination and prejudice in American society, resulting in conditions under which Arab American individuals have been unable to compete in the business world. They would be more able, entrepreneurs, Arab American entrepreneurs would be able to gain access to capital, contracts, and trade opportunities if they're qualified as a disadvantaged minority. I think my take on this has nothing to do with Arab Americans. My take on this has to do with the concept of disadvantaged minorities, qualifying disadvantaged minorities, and offering disadvantaged minorities some special opportunities under the federal government for access to capital, contracts, and trade. It's the concept of dividing us via ethnicity and race and saying
it's called affirmative action, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
You're right. That's what it is.
This is the
That's what you don't
Warren
like.
Native American
Yeah,
professor.
that's what I don't like.
Right. There's a name for it.
Thank you for boiling my soliloquy down to 2 words.
Sorry, I mean.
And 2 names have been quite famous. Elizabeth Warren using these very types of programs.
Exactly.
Apparently, I don't know.
Elizabeth Warren qualifying as a Native American
Right.
for these purposes.
Supreme Court, I think, is revisiting essentially Grutter v. Bollinger this fall, which could find racial preferences unconstitutional.
That's right.
All right. Buck Sexton.
And I'm already talking. All right, so people are leaving New York in droves because the taxes are so high. This may not be surprising to anybody, particularly anybody in the audience.
Or at this table.
Or at this table.
New Yorkers all.
New Yorkers all. I think the numbers, though, may surprise people just a little bit. The biggest migration exodus of any state between 2000 and 2010 was New York, 3.4 million residents leaving over that period.
I would have put $100 on California. That really surprises me.
Over the decade, it lost $45.6 billion as a result of that exodus. Apparently, according to the Tax Foundation, 600,000 New York residents moved to Florida, opting for the sunnier weather, the beaches, and better tax climate, actually, in Florida.
No state income tax.
No state income. And 208,000 Pennsylvanians moved to Florida. They took $8 billion of lost income for Pennsylvania with them. Just in 1 year alone, between 2009 and 2010, 40,000 New Yorkers left for Florida.
Do you think we could convince Glenn to let us do the show from Florida?
I was going to say, well,
I like
I was going to say, Glenn.
South Beach in particular?
I would move there.
Glenn is one of these people who has left the state.
We just heard that Glenn says yes.
Can I, before we do that, just
Holding
say
it
I'd rather just go to
and
Texas. Can we do Texas?
I like Texas too.
South Florida, the water's so warm.
I get a yes. I've got a yes.
We can all move to Texas.
Interestingly enough, better tax climate, people want to go to it. Who knew?
Right.
Interesting.
That is so
It's
weird.
crazy, SC.
Zany.
Weird.
Zany. SC, what do you got?
Well, so do you guys all remember Randy Duke Cunningham? He's the congressman from California, Republican. In 2005, he pled guilty to accepting more and larger bribes than any other member of Congress in history.
Having to do with his house,
There he
his
is.
yacht at Georgetown and the
Well, he's in prison, but he's a planner. He thinks ahead. And when he gets out of prison, he has already petitioned a judge to let him skirt a federal law that prohibits felons from owning guns, because he plans to move to a cabin in the Ozarks where he will need protection against
Bears.
rabid cougars. No, he's specific, Buck. Rabid cougars. And he'd also like to make some money in sporting competitions. As he puts it in this letter, this strongly worded letter, I flew aircraft that could disintegrate your building with a half-second burst and now can't carry a .22 caliber rifle.
So what does he suggest? He could be a terrorist, but
Well,
he can't
he's a
carry
prepper.
a
He's a
gun.
prepper. He wants to hunt and fish for food. I mean, he's very specific in this letter he sent in, this petition he has sent in. He essentially wants to be, you know, one of our audience
Dropping
members.
off the grid with a bow and arrow is a little more hardcore.
Hunger Games.
How do you feel
I
about
totally
this?
well
As a gun enthusiast,
I
but
am
also
kind of
law and order.
I'm
kinda
kind of
gal.
into this.
I think hold on. I think non-violent felons should be allowed to own a firearm.
Nope. I think if you're a felon, you should not be allowed to own a firearm.
Really? So
Yep.
if you're caught smoggling some weed, which, by the way, we've talked about as to whether that should be legal, you think you shouldn't be allowed to have a gun?
Yep, if you're
Yeah, I'm
willing
gonna
to
go with
break
SC
the
on
law,
that
if you're, I don't care what,
I don't like
what
your
the law
example.
is.
I liked it when you had it
You're willing to
hypothetical.
break the law, I don't trust you with a gun. Sorry.
Even
you
the
surrender that right.
bribes, gun? Come on.
Nah, I don't think so.
It's not a straight line.
I
Fine.
love me my guns, and I want him to defend himself against rabid cougars. And I'd
You just
kind of
want to
like,
do it with a Bowie
I'd
knife.
kind of like to see him in a sporting competition too. But I'm sorry, you're convicted felons, no guns.
SC draws the line.
Well, somewhere.
Former Alabama Representative Archer Davis, he is also drawing the line, apparently, against the Democratic Party to which he used to belong. He is cutting ties with that party, and he said that he is considering a future bid for Congress as a Republican from Virginia. Now, part of what is significant about Archer Davis, he's African American from Alabama. He introduced Barack Obama, then senator, at the Democratic convention, that big, huge speech. But he said, you know what, like many people did, like Ronald Reagan said, that he didn't leave the Democratic Party has left him.
Very Zell Miller of him.
Very Zell Miller. So we'll see if there are any others who might follow in his footsteps. There have been rumblings about others, but I see this as being quite courageous, actually, of him to buck his party in such a dramatic sort of way.
You know, can I just add an addendum? Because he's a Democrat coming to the Republican Party, I love this guy. However, I will be completely honest and say, we only love it when they're leaving theirs and coming to ours.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
what about we lost that
Lincoln
guy from
Chase-
Rhode Island? Yeah.
Yeah, we
that guy from Rhode Island.
when he left, we were like, hey, good.
I mean, we all hated Arlen Specter. You know, I mean, I consider this kind of cheap political stuff.
Well, so I don't think that it's
I don't love
cheap
this.
when you're really bucking the entire African American community
to align
I
yourself
want to
with the
believe this is
Republican Party.
courageous.
This is one of the guys that came out strongly against the Bain attacks, that said this was basically an attack on capitalism. He was one of the strongest
You're
critics
right. Maybe this
from
is
their side.
principled and not just a re-election attempt.
Let's
All
hope.
right.
We'll see. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you to Glenn Beck for your visit to the table, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow night.